What is up, all real estate loving individuals? This is episode number 38 of the Real Estate Take Podcast, and I'm your host, Wendell Butler. This is your go-to podcast with tons of information regarding the current real estate market, where we get various real estate professionals' current take on different areas of real estate. For today's guest, we got David Fredenberg. David Fredenberg is a real estate wholesaler and founder of Atlas Residential, serving the Charlotte metro area. While specializing in wholesaling, his work extends across the real estate spectrum, including land development, flipping, rental properties, and creative finance strategies, such as subject to deals. Through the wholesale side of the business, David partners with investors at every level, creating opportunities and connections that drive growth in the market. So let's welcome in David. David, how are you doing today?
Awesome. Hey, doing well.
Great. Nice to have you here. It's snowy in the background there, even though it's staying warm, even though it's a virtual thing, but it looks nice there.
Like to stay cozy.
Heck yeah. So yeah, I like to start it off just real quick, just to learn a little bit about yourself. I know you had your bio, but we like to dive into a little bit about kind of what got you in the real estate game, what's your backstory, and just who you are. So take it away.
Awesome. Well, I think real estate is always something that I've been really interested in. Always looked at it as a great method to build wealth for yourself. As far as my background, so I guess early on, I kind of got into real estate through my parents and a couple of rental properties. And I was the snot-nosed kid who used to go and cut the grass and fix your leaky faucet and that sort of thing. So I had a little bit of exposure pretty young. My parents, as time went on, sold off all their rentals and moved on with other things. But then had a background in construction management. I actually used to sell ready-mix concrete. And I was our structural guy. So I had pretty much ground up building. Did a lot of the mid and high rises in downtown Charlotte, South End area, but we'd worked with tract home builders. I mean, pretty much everything from pouring some curb and gutter and sidewalks to, 40 plus story buildings. So having that experience was actually a really easy jump getting into real estate because of that. I think just have a solid foundation for the building process as a whole. Obviously that goes into renovating homes as well as new construction. I think that was just something that I wanted to learn, and met a couple other guys that were already doing it and kind of jumped on with them and just got as much experience as possible. And here we are.
Love it. Yeah. I think real estate as a whole, it just gives you a lot of freedom and just ability to kind of grow in different areas too. It's you can do so much different things in real estate, and you're showing that you can do that. Not only can you wholesale, you can just do a lot of creative financing and fix and flip. You can build high rises. You can do whatever possible in real estate. It's something that's never really going to go away because people always need places to stay, live, work, travel to. They always need housing, right? So tell us a little bit about kind of what you do now, and dive into your day to day and what you kind of focus on, and maybe even the wholesale aspect of it, because I know you do a lot of wholesaling. You do a lot of fix and flips and stuff through your company too, that you work for and work with. But we work together. I bought some deals from you from wholesaling, and yeah, just talk a little bit about that and maybe how the market is today and your opinion on it. And yeah.
Now, I guess we'll start as far as my day-to-day. I run all of our dispositions. So anything that our acquisition side is getting under contract, I'm the one dispoing them. Puts me in a pretty unique position because I get to decide what makes sense to do what with each home. As far as, does it make sense that we does this make sense for a flip? Does it make sense to wholesale, which is the majority of what we do? So it puts you in a unique position. And I think the other thing that's cool about being a wholesaler is we work with thousands of investors. And I tell people this all the time. It's interesting because you hear so many different perspectives looking at even one house. You got some people that are very cut and dry, and they're like, I'm going to just do the usual cosmetic updates and put it back on the market and hope for the best. And there's other people that walk into a house and I can just see them with the vision, and they're like, I'm going to knock this wall down. I'm going to open this up. I'm going to change this part of the layout. And so it's just interesting seeing the different ideas that people have at times. There's a lot of properties that we will wholesale that thinking this is what most people are going to be looking at. And then you get some other opinions from people that were things that I may not have thought about, or just different ways to create a different opportunity. So it's really interesting just because we do get to see so many different sides of real estate by the people that we work with, from developers to people with large rental portfolios to people that are flipping. So it really does. It creates an interesting environment to see all those different perspectives. And it's helped me grow a lot because it's nice because I can lean on other people for their past experiences, mistakes, and you can learn a lot from other people. And I will say it's one of those things you tend to learn the most from the people sometimes that you least expect it from. But it just gives you a whole other look into other people's business models and how they like to structure things. So it does, it kind of opens your eyes to, like what you were saying, there's so many different ways to be successful in real estate. There's not just a one size fits all path forward. And it's a lot about creativity and more than anything, problem solving. I think that, one thing I've always liked about your newsletter is talking about not only the wins that you have, but the whiffs. It's the most, unfortunately, you learn the most when there are mistakes and when things don't go the way you plan. Anyone in real estate can obviously tell you though that it's all about problem solving and being quick on your feet, figuring out a solution, path forward when things don't go the way you want them to, because that's, for us, is almost every single time. It seems like, especially when you're working with chaotic sellers that have all kinds of chaos ensuing around them and unreliability, and it's hard because there is that unknown. And it's one of those things that I feel like you have to take each situation as its own situation, because you just never know based on what we're getting in, what's going to end up happening. There are just a lot of times that okay, I think I understand the situation. I understand how this whole process is going to look. I remember 5 other examples that are pretty similar that we've closed on, and then something new gets thrown into the equation and throws everything else off. So it is just it's a lot of problem solving, I would say, more than anything. But I guess to answer the later part of your question, as far as the market right now, I'd say really since we started getting into later fall, early winter last year, the market's just been pretty stagnant. And I talked to a lot of investors about this as well. One of the things, I guess, to adapt and to be successful in a market like this is doing things that are going to make you stand out. For example, when it comes to flips, yes, you could just do the bare minimum, the easy tier 1 granite in the kitchen, and maybe just some paint and flooring. And that doesn't seem to cut it in today's market. You have to really do things that are going to appeal to the people you're looking for as buyers. So that's something that I always try to keep in mind, especially for ourselves if we're ever flipping a property, is ultimately who is the end buyer for this property? Who do I want to be the one to buy this? And we can definitely get into a few stories of whiffs of my own when it comes to flips and things that I learned. I know one of the things that you had mentioned is some advice to newer investors. I can tell you one thing that I learned the hard way is if you ever are doing a flip, it's better to just truly wholesale it if it's in good condition, not do anything to it, or do everything. When you go in the middle and you spend some money and you don't do everything and you kind of do a halfway job in some of the areas, it's going to show, which I would say is one of my biggest pieces of advice and something that I did learn the hard way. And it was something that we thought it was going to be a home run. It was actually a townhome in Ballantyne and already in great shape, really didn't need a whole lot of anything, but we came in and did some touch-ups in the kitchen and bathrooms, not anything crazy, obviously. And I think it was the attention to detail. Again, it would have been better for us to either just put it just as is and let someone else come in and do it themselves, an actual end buyer, or we should have just done everything and done a complete full remodel. And we didn't. We went right in the middle, and that property ended up sitting for like 5 months on the market. And we had a ton of showings and a ton of interest, but the offers weren't coming in where we wanted them to. And eventually it got to the point where we just needed to get rid of it. And we did, and the holding expenses obviously catch up to you when you're sitting on something for that long. And that was definitely a big learning lesson, I think, for all of us, and especially for new investors. That's something that I would tell everyone is it's better to go all in or all out. Don't go in the middle, because that's where you get into trouble, and it just stacks up the amount that you're all in. And if anything does happen, it doesn't sell quickly, and that's never a fun place to be.
Yeah, it seems like in this market with home prices shooting up since COVID and just kind of staying where they've been for such a long time, and then also rates dead shooting up right after, kind of staying at that high point. It's just been like that so long that we have buyer burnout almost. And the rates get cut 0.25% or whatever, and they drop that much, but it's really not making any difference. I think it's at the point that buyers are just burnt out on this economy and market that you can still be successful in real estate, but now you have to more think about what the buyer's seeing in their shoes, because homes are expensive. Like even if you're flipping something and selling it for like 300,000, like that's an expensive mortgage, like with today's rates. So yeah, you have to almost either wholesale it and like go in knowing you're gonna wholesale it, take a price cut on the exit, or you got to redo the whole thing and really think about what your buyers are thinking about. Like if you were buying this home with like kids, right? You're gonna want a nice yard that's fenced in. Like say you have a house that isn't fenced in and it's a nice yard, like you probably want to fence it in because that's going to be a big selling point, and that's costly. So you got to add that to like your renovation. Same with like storage and stuff. Like if it doesn't have enough storage, like can you add some extra storage? Because like maybe they have kids, they need to put stuff into certain places, they need extra storage, things like that. They have to think about that you didn't really have to past few years in like the real estate market. You can kind of just make it look nice and someone would buy it. So it's coming to the point that you have to really think like a buyer nowadays, and it's how it used to be, right? Because that's how the real estate market should be. It should be like, hey, I got to create this product for a specific buyer pool. And yeah, you see a lot of people kind of lose their shirt investing, and it's mainly because they don't think like the buyer and they kind of just half-ass it, and then they get picked apart. And I'm going through that as well. Like one of my flips, like we did a very good job. We did like basically a full remodel of it, but like we left the HVAC, and the HVAC's pretty old. We made the yard smaller because we subdivided it and are building a home on another parcel of land on it. But like those are like the two biggest complaints that we're getting. It's like we have a ton of showings, ton of interest. Like we love the house, the price point's great, but the yard's too small or the HVAC's too old. And it's kind of like we're telling them like, hey, make an offer that makes sense. And like, I don't know, you can even ask for us to change the HVAC, and we might do it just to get this off our books. But like they're not even offering. They're just so picky. So buyers are so picky to the point that if it's not something they love, they won't even make an offer, not even a creative offer.
Yeah.
So you got to be like really, I think we're at like 20, 25 showings, and like we've had like 20 of them say, we love it, top of the list, no offer. We're like, this is insanity.
Which is the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah, because it's like, what else can we do?
I know, because it's a slap in the face, because you're like, you're telling me this, but your words aren't reflecting the actions, and that it can be very, very frustrating. We've definitely gone through that as well.
Yeah, so I think it's just a tough market for sure. And I think what you said about the advice to new investors, just to like, really gauge it, you need to go all in or all out. Your numbers have to work, obviously, but that is how you have to do it. You have to make a very nice product to be able to sell your fix and flip or your new build quickly or within a reasonable time. Unless you're like in a specific pocket, there's certain neighborhood pockets that might move faster. But overall, you need to have a good end product in this market. Now, I wanted to dive in a little bit about kind of like your disposition side of your business, because you're one of the best wholesalers that I've worked with, just based on your numbers, based on like your evaluation, based on just communication with investors that reach out to you, and very straightforwardness. Basically, how did you come to create that type of communication structure and like figuring out those numbers, as well as kind of communicating effectively with investors? So I think where a lot of new wholesalers and wholesalers drop the ball is, number one, their numbers are absolute trash because they just like don't understand actual rehab, actual ARV, etc. They just kind of throwing numbers out there. And then two, they really just don't ever have enough information to like give to the investor, which you always have both. So dive into a little bit about like how you created that part of your dispo process and how it really benefits you, because I'm sure it does a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're very big on transparency. If I know something's a problem, I'm going to tell you. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. We do that with our pictures that we take. Are they taken by a professional photographer? Yes. It's not like they're heavily edited, though. We want people to see exactly what they're getting. The worst thing I could do, it's a disservice to myself, send a property out to people and they're thinking it's one thing, and then they come and see it in person, it's something completely different. Because then people feel like they're being misguided or not lied to, but I'm trying to hide something. And I think that's something that's always been really important to myself and to us as a company, is transparency is key. Again, I'm not going to sugarcoat it to you. If I know of certain issues that are existing, I'll tell you. I won't know everything. I mean, part of where I get a lot of this information is from the seller of the property. And a lot of times they either don't know or give us bad information. And I tell people that too. I was like, I think it's this, but I'm not 100% sure. Trust but verify. And that goes for, I think the whole process is how we wanted to structure it is, it's more for us, it's about building relationships with investors. We're not not one and done where you want to screw someone on one deal and then all of a sudden you walk away and be sitting there like, oh, I just made an extra whatever $5,000 on this deal. It's like, no, I would much rather build a relationship with someone that we can continue to work together. It's an open line of communication between myself and them. And again, I don't know everything, and we tell people that this is when it's off market. This is the Wild West. This is not, well, you lied on the disclosure. The only disclosure we give you is everything is no representation, because we don't know. I mean, we don't do home inspections on these properties before we're sending them off market. And there's times that I don't even go and see the property in person before we send it. So I'm doing the same thing that the investors are doing. We're looking at pictures, and I tell everyone, go in person, bring a contractor, understand what needs to happen, do your due diligence up front and try to make as educated of a guess and understanding of what your rehab budget would be. But getting to that piece of it, I'm constantly putting myself in the shoes of the investor that would be buying this property from me. I think to myself, what would I do in this property to create as much value as possible, build as much equity in it as possible? So because that's the way that I'm trying to look at it, you do have to have at least a decent understanding of rehab budget, what certain things cost, especially the big ticket items. I always find it funny. People always ask me, well, what's the roof, HVAC, and water heater age? Are those big ticket items? Mainly the roof and HVAC are bigger ticket items. Water heaters aren't as much, but yes, they are. But at the same time, there's obviously a lot of other things that can cost a lot of money in properties that could be unknown. And so those are the things, obviously anything structural, those are the main things that I'm always looking for. That's a lot of how we wanted to build our dispo side, is to have people trust us with what we're saying, because we do know what we're talking about. We do understand how much certain things cost. And I take that into account, because at the end of the day, it needs to be a win-win-win situation. It needs to be a win for the seller of the property. It needs to be a win for us, and it needs to be a win for the investor. And if it doesn't work on all three sides, you don't have a deal typically. That can be the most challenging part, is finding that middle ground where you can make it work for everyone. It really needs to be synergy. It needs to have everyone benefit in one way or another. I think that's really one of the biggest things, is always putting myself in the shoes of the investor and thinking about if I was to buy this house, save for $200,000, and then I needed to put another $50K into it of rehab, and I expect to get whatever $350,000 for it on the market, I need to take into account how much margin an investor is going to be making. I do think that's one of the things that you do see a lot of with newer wholesalers. And I mean, there's times that sometimes we don't always know. I mean, it depends on ultimately what someone's exit strategy is going to be. Because there's been times where I'm like, I think the margins are pretty tight on this for a flip. I don't really think it makes that much sense as a rental. Let's see if someone else sees something that I'm missing. And a lot of times there are. I mean, there's people that are very big, especially with large rental portfolios. Though obviously we always try to stick within the 1% rule, but anyone that is looking for homes right now understands that that's very hard to come by in this market because of housing prices. And so that's a lot of times where you'll find people that have different perspectives. I'll give you an example. Not long ago, it was a manufactured home that was sitting on just over an acre of land, and didn't really make, with how the shape of that parcel was, it didn't really make sense to try to subdivide it and put maybe another manufactured home or something on it. And we actually had some guy come in and he was like, yeah, I'm going to knock this down and build a single family on it. And that's who we ended up working with. And I honestly never thought the numbers were really going to work with that, but he had experience in the area and was very familiar with I guess there's new construction in that area in particular, and he was able to make it all work. And that's one of the things I was talking about earlier, where just because I'm seeing something one way doesn't mean that someone else is going to see it completely differently and sees another path of how they can build that value. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And again, another tip for new investors, you're trying to create something that's going to stand out. That's how you make it in a market like this. When it's great and it's good, you can literally throw shit against the wall and it will stick. And I think that's what there's a lot of investors that got in just before COVID and were working during COVID, and they could literally do the bare minimum. And we're getting offers $20,000 over asking and selling homes super quickly. And the market's just not like that anymore. And you have to adjust. This is a very adapt or die type of industry. And you have to understand what you can do to really differentiate yourself from other investors and flippers, builders, whatever it is. Because we see the same thing with new construction builders. If you're going to build something, there's a lot of other builders right now. There's a lot of people looking for land. There's a lot of people looking for these opportunities. And you have, obviously, you need to match the area. I'm not going to, want to build a 4,000 square foot luxury home in a rough part of town. At the same time, you want to make sure that you're doing something different. It needs to be some type of unique quality that you can see someone falling in love with. And I'll give you actually an example of that with a property that we recently flipped and we haven't closed yet, but it was a very unique opportunity that was a modular home. Actually, it was a 2016 modular home. It was in the middle of nowhere in Marshville. Sat on just over 5 acres of land. Mainly needed cosmetic stuff. I knew there was going to be a few other things that would pop up with it, but we actually tried to wholesale it, and it was pretty much crickets. I mean, I think a lot of because people know the market's slow, they're thinking once I flip this, it's going to sit for a long time. And what I saw in it was there was an unfinished attic that was pretty much just studs. There's no flooring down, already had electrical up there. And then it also had an in-law suite. And those two things really stood out to me because I was immediately thinking to myself, well, what someone looking to get out of the city wants a little bit of land, what other things would benefit someone like that? And having an in-law suite, I think, is always a great deal. Wendell, you can speak for that with where you're at now. I mean, for whether it's an elderly parent or teenage kid that wants to just live in something outside of their parents' house, I can understand the appeal to something like that. Then the unfinished attic space, that almost doubled the square footage of the entire home. It was a large area, and it wasn't cheap to finish it, but at the same time, it ended up paying off. Some of the partners were looking at this as turn around and run. We don't want to close on it. We don't want to do anything. And I was really pushing forward, and I was like, guys, I see the vision with this house. I think it's going to make a lot of sense once we do finish that attic, once we fix everything up. That was a complete remodel, and we ended up spending more money than we originally planned on, even more than what our contingency was, but that happens sometimes. It paid off. When we listed the house, in the first 2 days, we had 6 showings. And we actually we ended up going under contract for $5,000 over what we were asking for it the second day on the market. And some people would look at that and be like, oh, well, they just got lucky, or it must have just been the perfect buyer that saw it, or the perfect timing. And it really is the preparation that I think led up to it. It wasn't luck. I think it was, you can say there's a certain amount of luck to selling any home, but I think it was what we did and the value that we added is what sold that house. I mean, there's a reason I was surprised that we got so many showings in that short period of time, but that is where you build that value. Is I put myself in the shoes of someone that would be looking to buy that house. And, even with like the virtually staged photos we did, like on that upstairs, there's just a huge bonus room. So I showed like a little kids area, office space, and really put a lot of emphasis on multi-generational living with an in-law suite. And that's something that's important to a lot of people. And they told us that was the reason, that was what sold them, was those two aspects of that house that differentiated it from every other thing they were looking at in that area. And so that ended up working out really well. Obviously, knock on wood, it's not closed just yet. It's almost. We're hoping to close at the end of this next week. But that is where you build the value and how you can really establish yourself in this industry, is finding how to add value where other people might not be looking. A lot of that is creativity. You can't just look at something and be like, oh, this home's a piece of crap, and I don't understand how, even if I fix it up, it's not going to be much. That's the wrong way to look at it. You have to come in with a creative and open mind and really understand different ways of how to create that value. And part of it is looking at other people. I mean, other investors, when you're running comps and looking at different areas, that's you can get a lot of inspiration from what other people have done, and then take a combination of a lot of those and put them together and create something new. So that's another little tidbit for newer investors. Don't necessarily just copy and paste someone, obviously, but want to make that's how you do it. You can take inspiration from others and put it into something completely different. And it's an awesome thing when it works.
Yeah, because you want to you can use other people's examples to like make your product better, because you say you only flip like one house a month, like you only have like one kind of loop, like feedback loop, right, of like each house that you sell, and they're all different, so you can't really see like what the market wants as much and as fast as possible. But if you look at other people's properties that sell really fast in the same game, doing the same stuff, like you'll be able to be like, oh, they sold it for that quick because let me look at the house and how they did it, and you can see how they did it, you kind of catch what trends are going on, and that helps a lot with like trying to make the best product possible to sell quick. Yeah, like to talk about that property too, like I've been finding that a lot of rural properties, which most people stay away from, like I even usually stay away from it for the most part, unless it makes a lot of sense. But the rural properties have been moving way faster than some of these city properties. And it's because, honestly, I just think it's because people want to get away from people. They want land, because everything that's getting built in the city, you have like no land. It's like a small ass property, and you're paying like double what it would be to just go buy that place that's rurally outside of the city. Sure, you got to drive like a little bit to get to like some civilization, but they would rather take that all day, especially for the interest rates today and their home prices today, to have like land and just like some seclusion. And yeah, every rural-ish property that we've bought and sold like have sold within 2 days. It's like clockwork. Because the point, you can't buy like farmland and then try to sell that. Like that might take a while. But yeah, like 5 acres or less, close enough to some towns, some like activity, some population, and it's just kind of like your own home oasis. Like those are great. I think those are great deals today. And something that's weird is like lenders hate rural properties for the most part, but it's kind of like, guys, like they're selling.
Yeah,
like,
and it's for a reason. I mean, I think part of it too is, Charlotte is one of these areas that we have so many people moving here from all over, especially from up north. So you get a lot of people in New York, New Jersey. So a lot of those people, obviously they're coming down to somewhere like Charlotte, and they've already had the city experience and understand what that looks like. And that was probably a reason why they moved from there in the first place to somewhere like Charlotte. I think a lot of it is, I understand you can get a lot more bang for your buck moving just a little bit outside the city. And exactly like what you said, they're looking for a little bit more privacy, land, I think just calm in general. We know how chaotic cities can be in general. So I think that's really one of the biggest motivating factors for people that are moving here, is that's what they're looking for. And I can even, speaking from personal experience, not for me, but family members, like one of my, I had an uncle actually moved from Long Island and came down to Conover, South Carolina. And like in the middle, that was like in the middle, like outside of that little town in the middle of nowhere. That's what he was looking for. So I think that it says a lot too, that somewhere like Charlotte that has so many people constantly moving here, everyone's looking for something different. If you're looking to move to a big city, you're not coming to Charlotte to move to a big city per se. It's normally to get away from the big city. So the Chicago, New Yorks of the world. But yeah, I totally agree. It's interesting because we've seen the same thing where sometimes we've had a couple of flips that were inside either Charlotte or surrounding little metropolitan areas, and they tend to sit a little bit more. And then part of it's too, you have so much more competition. So the more rural you are, there's a lot less competition. And again, if that's what someone's looking for, is just to get out of the big city. That's a great avenue to do that. Still being 30, 45 minutes away from downtown, it's like the best of both worlds for a lot of people.
Yeah, speaking of like the competition too, it's when you run analysis for fix and flips, you want like a good amount of comps to show like, yeah, this is what it could sell for. But I've been seeing that if you're like in a bigger city like Charlotte, like a ton of comps, like, yeah, you can solidify where the ARV is, but then you can look at the listings, like what's currently listed. I always look at the listings and what's going on. And if there's a lot of different properties there that are listed as well, like your flip might sit for a while, compared to like if you look at something rurally a little outside the city that maybe has only 2 comps, something that you're like, I don't know, I just might not, I can't really figure out the ARV. But then you look at the listings and it's like no listings, but there were like multiple properties sold pretty quickly in that area. Like that's like a factor you need to look at as well. Like, okay, this is something that a lot of properties don't come on the market, but they sell really fast. And those are the things you got to think about in this market, right? Because I don't know, buyers are picky. That's all I can say. Buyers are very, very picky right now. And you got to be creative. You got to think about what they're thinking about, and you got to find ways to differentiate yourself, like you've been saying. But let's dive a little bit more into kind of so I asked you about kind of dispo portion of it. How do you guys decide, like, if you want to flip the property versus wholesale? Because I know normally you guys get the properties locked up pretty good value for wholesaling. Like, what makes you say, let's try to flip this? Like, just for the new investors or people getting into wholesaling, like, is there like a rough criteria you look at, like numbers wise or percentage return wise, risk factors and stuff? Break that down a little bit. You don't have to go into like super detail, but just your mindset.
No, I mean, for the most part, I mean, I would say probably 90% of all the properties that we get under contract, we're going to wholesale. That's typically always the intention is of what we're trying to do. When it comes to anything that we ever flip ourselves or think about wholesale, that typically there's a few things. We're looking obviously for a decent bit of equity already in the property based on the current condition. We're not going to take on a huge project. I mean, because I'm the one that manages and flips all of our properties. And I honestly don't have time to sit there and manage a bunch of flips at the same time. I just do not have the time. So it really has to make sense for us. Either we just got it stupid cheap and there's already a ton of equity and it's just super easy, straightforward cosmetic stuff. That's a lot of times when we would, because if we're looking at it as, okay, I can flip this house in a month or a month and a half, and I can double the amount of margin that I'd have in it compared to if I just wholesaled it. That's when we sit back and look at the numbers and the neighborhood and take all these other things into consideration and try to understand, okay, does this make sense to hold this property for, could it be 5 months? And that's where I think that really comes into play, because again, ultimately the goal is to wholesale everything for the most part. Yeah. There's very, very rarely do we get houses that come in from our acquisition side where it's like, guys, this is definitely a wholesale or flip candidate. Very rarely do we get that. And the other situation that we have one of those right now that's actually on the market, that it was a seller that was in pre-foreclosure, then filed bankruptcy. The numbers didn't really make sense to wholesale. I mean, we could have, it wouldn't have been really worth it for us. And so we ended up actually taking them out of bankruptcy, reinstated the loan, and then took it sub 2, flipped the property. So obviously we have deed in hand, and I think it took a little bit more than a month to flip it, and it's on the market right now. And that type of situation is typically when we'll flip a property, and that was very cosmetic. I mean, we just updated some flooring, paint, did all the kitchen, bathrooms, did some landscaping on the exterior, but those are the things that I'm mainly looking for. And again, I mean, if we had the time and resources to dedicate to doing some larger flips, we probably would. Because again, if you get a house cheap enough, you can bake all of your potential losses into that. Then you know that there's going to be no way that you're not making money, even if everything goes to shit throughout the entire process. So I think one of the biggest things that we're doing is risk management more than anything, just like every investor. But it is ultimately that's where the deciding factor comes in of which exit strategy we'd move forward with. But again, I mean, when it comes to wholesale, we double close in all of our properties. I think that some people prefer that, other people don't. As far as investors that buy it from us, obviously when you're talking about closing costs and everything else, but it's one of those things that you just got to sit down and run the numbers, understand all the different varying factors. And again, that's really how we make a lot of those decisions. And again, very rarely are we actually flipping. It's more either by something that we tried to wholesale that we still see the potential in, like the modular home I was talking about, or something that's just so straightforward and doesn't make sense for us not to do it. So that, to roundabout answer your question.
Yeah, I mean, there's two different factors too. It's like wholesaling, if you built your business, and also, yeah, it comes to also like really focus on one niche and don't do too much, because then you're doing too much at once and you might like lose money in one portion of your business focusing on another. So I'm sure if you have a lot of flips going on, you won't be able to focus on the wholesale deals, and vice versa, right? You have a lot of wholesales going on, you can't really focus on the flips. So you can do one or two. Like once you get your business kind of operating and flowing pretty well, you can like go outside of your niche a little bit here and there if it makes sense. But I think too many people try to do everything at once, and then they don't make any money because they're just all over the place. And like some great, yeah. And then some great things about wholesaling is just like your risk factor's lower, because don't ever technically own the property. I mean, you guys double close, so you do technically own it for like a couple hours.
Yeah, it is. And it's from a cash flow perspective. I mean, that's something that we have to look at also. It's if we were to take on this flip again, yeah, maybe we can make double what we'd be making just wholesaling it. But at the same time, again, we're taking so much more risk in doing that. And at the end of the day, to be a wholesaler, it's all about volume. You want to be doing as much as possible. Not every deal is going to be a home run, but it doesn't matter because you're still turning and burning it. So that's ultimately where you want to get to, is if you have, your acquisition side is efficient enough where you're bringing in a lot of good quality leads, it's that's where you're like, all right, well, let's zip these out as quickly as possible. And so you can get through so much with a lot less risk. And I think that is one of the beauties of wholesaling. And another piece of advice: don't listen to the gurus on YouTube and whatever when it comes to wholesaling. Because trust me, if it was as easy as people say, everyone would do it. So it obviously is much more challenging dealing with some of the situations and complicated titles, estates, all these different things that come in with some of them. And that's a part I feel like a lot of investors don't see, and they look at wholesalers as, oh, well, these guys they're just middleman. They don't really do anything. That's very, very far from the truth. That's
yeah. Well, it's also like, I think wholesaling is the hardest thing you can possibly do in real estate. Anytime that you're the front man of like a deal, which is the person locking up the deal, like that's the hardest portion of it, because especially as a wholesaler, because not only do you have to lock up the deal at a price that makes sense for an investor, you have to now account your assignment fee within it, or whatever you want to make as well. So you have to lock up for even less. And having that conversation with the seller is really tough, especially with all the new data nowadays that they just open up Zillow and they're like, my house is worth 300,000, but like it's just an absolute piece of shit. So like it's really worth like 200, right? You got to battle with them on that. You got to like teach them, educate them, have call after call after call, follow up with them, deal with them if the seller ends up not like allowing you to show the house, deal with the seller if they like miss a payment and they're all of a sudden getting foreclosed on. There's title issues, there's multiple owners on the title. You like have to deal with all that, right? So there's like pros and cons to everything, right? Like wholesaling, the pro is it's more risk-free. You're not really putting up like, I mean, you got marketing and advertising and stuff that you're spending overhead on, but putting money into the deal yourself that you could possibly use, like lose, and you can do it really fast. Like it's quick turnaround. So those are some pros, because you could like get a deal on a contract, wholesale it and sell it within like 2 or 3 weeks. And all of a sudden you make like 10, 20, 30 grand from it, right? But the cons are it's really, really hard to find those deals. It's really hard to lock them up. It takes a long time. You got to deal with all the nuances that come with the selling process, which real estate, nothing is ever perfect. Things always come up, and you could lose the deal, right? Based on if the investor sucks, based on if the seller ends up sucking. And most of the time it is because the investor gets cold feet and falls through and ruins the whole deal. So there's pros and cons to the investor, right? Pros are, you have, people don't believe this, like, but as an investor, like if you can't find a deal, if you could sit down for like a week and just underwrite deals and network and underwrite deals, and you'll find a deal within a week easily, as long as you talk to enough people. Like wholesalers, there's so many wholesalers out there that are doing the work for you to find the deal. You just have to make sure the numbers that work, and then you can also market yourself, etc. Like there's so many deals out there for investors, and you can network enough to sit back and get deals set to you. That's a big pro, right? Another pro is obviously you're in control of the situation when you buy the house and stuff, and that's great. And then I would say it's even like easier as long as the numbers work, just to have the process go through as a fix and flipper or investor, because as long as you have good contractors lined up, it's really just, you're just supervising the whole process, right? As long as you set it up that way. Cons are obviously you have skin in the game, your money is in it, you have to raise money, raise capital, it's more expensive, etc. Right? So there's pros and cons to both, right? It's like, which one do you want to deal with the most? And that's kind of how you should think if you want to get into real estate investing. Like, do you want to put up way more effort to find these deals and then make maybe a little less money or quicker money, or you can make a shit ton of money wholesaling, like an unbelievable amount of money. But it's just harder to find those deals and lock them up and then find the right investor. Or do you want to be the investor that sits back, underwrites these deals constantly, and then deals with the whole skin in the game and a little bit slower return? So there's pros and cons to both. I think wholesaling is the best way to get started, but you have to really, like you said, you have to really understand the renovation aspect. You have to understand ARV. You want to talk to investors, understand how they're looking at stuff. Exactly what you do, David, where you understand the market just like an investor, right? Because if you just listen to these social media gurus that say like, hey, it's so easy, you just call this seller, you just get it 50K under value, and then you just wholesale it to an investor that'll pay you 50K above that, and you make a 50K assignment fee. So if it was that easy, everybody in the whole world would be doing it, right? It is one of the hardest things, and I don't wholesale because I think it's just not me. Like, I don't want to deal with that bullshit, to be honest.
It's a headache. I mean, it's an understatement at times.
Yeah, like I'll wholesale some deals. Like if I get a deal on a contract and I'm like, I don't want to deal with this, like I'd rather just wholesale it, I'll do it. But I'm always an end buyer because it is, to me, it's easier that way for me mentally and just how I'm wired. But vice versa, some people might like wholesaling better and it might be easier to them. So you just got to pick and choose the best option for you. I would say the same thing. Don't listen to social media gurus, people that are a guru on social media and they're not investing anymore, they have no idea what they're talking about. They probably invested in like 3 deals during COVID, but you could buy like a box, paint it red, and then sell it for 50K more.
Yeah.
Like, and a lot of those people have no idea what they're doing. If you ask them to go flip a house in this market, they would lose $100,000. Like, they have absolutely no idea. So I would just read books, I'd go to networking events, I'd talk to people like David that actually know what the hell they're doing, and just learn that way and learn by doing, right, as much as you can. But yeah, just to wrapping this up, because I know you're busy, you got a lot of stuff to dispo. I always end with like 3 questions that you can just quickly answer. One, you already gave a lot of advice as well, but like if you can give a new investor or someone that just got into wholesaling, like just your most important piece of advice, maybe looking at yourself back before you got started and when you got started, like what's something you wish you knew getting into it that would have helped you today? Like what's that word of encouragement or help you would say?
Take your time is really my biggest piece of advice. In the world that we live in today, everyone wants to just be 50 steps ahead, and you got to take it one step at a time. And that goes for wholesaling or for trying to be a real estate investor, flipping, doing rentals, whatever. You don't need to rush into things, because that's when you make mistakes and you don't fully account for all of the risk you could potentially be taking. Same thing with the learning aspect, I would say, is one of my biggest pieces of advice. Is, again, there's the gurus, and then there's people that they have a very, very proven track record of being successful. Believer in mentorship. Again, if you want to go to someone that can teach you exactly how to do whatever it is you want to do, as far as if it's wholesaling or being a flipper, being, getting into the Burr method and doing all these, whatever it is you plan on doing, it's worth learning from someone that is proven, can show, they have a proven track record of their success. And again, if you have to pay someone to get that information, I think that's money well spent. And again, and that goes back into just take your time. There's no point in rushing into things and making a lot of mistakes that could be easily avoided when you can just learn from others' mistakes that can help drastically, especially when it comes to your very first deal. Again, making sure you understand the market that it's in. Take your time is really my biggest piece of advice when it comes to that.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the best things you could do too is, like, when I got started, I kind of just dove in, which I wouldn't advise that to everybody, especially in this market. Like, one of the best ways you can get into investing and learn the most is, like, if you get a deal, an opportunity, bring it to an investor and like give it to them, and then just say, hey, you can have this, but like, let me get a small percentage of it and let me just learn the whole process from you as you do it. And like, that alone is going to teach you so much more than anything else. And it's going to save you like the risk of losing money on the first one. It's going to get you a track record. It's going to get you like understanding of how to actually do it. And it's just like a great way to build a relationship with that investor, and like, they'll look out for you. And the thing about real estate is, like, when you look out for other people and try to win as a team, like, people look out for you too. And it's like, it's awesome. It's a small world in the real estate investing or career entrepreneurship. When you start helping other people, they help you. Abundance mindset is everything. But yeah, I think it's a great point. Like, take your time. There's no need to rush. In the day and age of social media and stuff, like, you think you have to rush everything. You think like, if you started investing 3 years ago, if you're not like a multimillionaire, like, you suck. That's not true. It's like, you got to take your time and build a base and really work towards being the best version that you could possibly be of yourself at that aspect. But all right, second question, and you can pick any of these and you can recommend a few, but I always ask people, like, what is, your favorite business, investing, or real estate book, or anything that's on mindset, entrepreneurship, that you could recommend to anybody?
If I had to say one of the most impactful books, and this is one that I try to read once a year, is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. One of my favorite books of all time. I mean, and that goes for, it's more negotiating, obviously, than anything. It goes into sales. It goes into every facet of your life, though. You don't realize how much negotiating you do on a day-to-day basis in so many different aspects. And a lot of, I'm a huge Chris Voss fan. For those who don't know who Chris Voss is, please look him up. He's the man and can teach you a lot of stuff. But it's everything about your approach in a negotiation or situation, from your tone to your mindset to this. I'm very big on like the psychological aspect of how all of us humans work. And so that's deep dives into, hey, instead of saying one that I've always loved, and it works really well, is when you call someone, you're cold calling someone, so say it's a seller, instead of saying, you want them to say no, because it gives them power. So saying, am I catching you at a bad time? Them saying, no, you're not catching me at a bad time, gives them it's a psychological thing that gives them power in that situation. And then it's easier to progress through a conversation compared to, is this a good time? Yeah, it's a good time. And it's crazy.
Yep.
It's little tricks though, like that it's a lot of what he talks about in this book he breaks down so well just negotiating tactics. Power of silence is one of my favorites, but it's a lot about the psychological aspect of how negotiation works. And Chris Voss was a hostage negotiator, so obviously it was very high stakes. And so his was literally do or die. It was either this works or I just shot myself in the foot and got off. So, but yeah, I would say that's probably one of my favorite books of all time. Again, I read it just to kind of revitalize myself in my negotiating skills once a year, but very, very powerful stuff.
Yeah. I think people forget that in business, entrepreneurship, or even real estate, it's all about people. So if you don't understand people or understand just a psychological aspect of people, like you're not going to be successful because you can't build relationships that way. You can't negotiate that way. You can't understand what people are going through that way, because most of real estate, for example, is you're solving problems. If you can't understand how to get that problem out of that person to solve and then help map out how you're going to solve that problem, then you're not going to be able to get a lot of deals. If you're just tossing out numbers and kind of just not trying to show that you're trying to help them and solve that problem, it's probably not going to work out. There's some people it does because all they care about is money, and that's their problem. It's money. But most of the time, it's not just the money. It's like they have to move somewhere for their family. They blah, blah, they think their house is too shitty that they don't even think you want an offer on it. They have some medical stuff. Like you can help solve that problem through the purchasing of real estate. You just got to think creatively about it. And if you don't have the aspect of understanding people and being able to communicate, you just won't be able to be successful. So that's a great book. I need to actually read it. I've read like excerpts of it. I still haven't read the whole book. I need to do it. And maybe I'll put that on my list to read because it is a good refresher. It's a good refresher. I read books like it, and it is the psychological of like people it's pretty interesting, honestly. And then you start using that stuff and you're like, oh, it kind of works.
No, I mean, I'm telling you, the amount that you can implement in your everyday life, and again, not just professionally, but personally, so many different types of relationships that you have in your life. It's insane how it works too, because it's like, I remember there was times, the first time I read it, I was reading, I can't remember exactly what the example was, but I literally tried the trick like that next day and it worked. And I was like, holy crap, like this book actually is, I think Chris Voss has he's obviously figured something out. But it's the implementation is crazy. And there's a ton of other great books obviously out there, but definitely one of my favorites and definitely put on your list, Wendell.
Yeah. And people would say like, is that manipulating? Like, isn't that bad? It's like, no, it's not. It's just, you're trying to say things a certain way to get the answers out that helps you progress in the conversation you're having. That's all it is, right? It's not, you're not necessarily like manipulating people to make a decision that they don't want to make. Like you're helping open their eyes to the possibility of that decision being in their favor, which it normally is. They just have such a closed door, and you got to find a way to open that up.
I would say, what's the difference between influence and manipulation? Because they're two very similar things, and that is the intent. It is, what is your intent? What is your reason why? Your motivation. Influencing someone is mutually beneficial, whereas manipulation is like a parasite. It's only one side is benefiting. So it's a fine line, and there's a balance to that. But at the end of the day, that truly is what the difference between those two really are. So totally agree.
Yeah. All right. So let's wrap this on up. I always just leave the floor to you at the end, and I just like to ask you, is there anything else you want to tell the audience, like how to contact you with social media, maybe meetups that you run or attend, or charity events, business links, etc.? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, we're actually trying to get a little bit more engaged on social media, and a lot of it is more for sellers of properties, is obviously our ultimate target audience. But you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not too big on really any other social media besides that. We do a little bit of stuff on like YouTube, but I guess I can just give you the links to put in there.
Yeah, I'll put all the links in the bio for everybody listening, and they'll be in the bio for you. But awesome. Well, David, thanks for coming on. It was awesome talking to you, and I always love getting together with you. Also, we gotta meet up again and get some lunch soon.
Or golf.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely golf for sure. The fall golf, fall's here, so you gotta get the fall season going. Golfing in the fall is the best. You wear long sleeve, long pants. It's great. But awesome. Thank you for coming on, David, and look forward to continue working with you and appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Wendell.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening.